ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Curious John episode 1. Or maybe this is teaser episode 1 or preview episode 1. Well, just probably preview episode, since there isn't going to be a preview episode 2. Anyways, back on track. Welcome. I'm your host, John. And if you came across this for no apparent reason, welcome. If you're following me from some of my other content, some slightly more risque, hey, how's it going? So, secondary podcast. Originally, the concept for this was for me to include these in my other podcast, but because the tone and the idea of it is, basically the other side of the coin, I thought it would just be more prudent to create another podcast, something where the feel of it is a little different, maybe a little bit less jovial, but a little bit more serious, a little bit more introspective, a little bit more perspective driven. And that's the idea for this podcast. It's still very malleable. It's still not hard set as to what I'm going to do with this podcast. And because of that, because of the nature of what I'd like to do, the content might not be as consistent. But I hope that you could see that the quality will be a step above from what you've seen from me in the podcasting realm. So what to expect from this podcast? The idea initially was to interview people on certain things that they have an opinion on, or maybe things that they have lived through, or things that they have experienced that have affected them, or maybe an interesting career choice and the struggles that goes along with that. And it's a challenge for me in the sense that I have to find people that can have a lengthy conversation about this specific topic. And that's also the challenge in the sense of content creation, because finding people consistently on, for example, a weekly basis like I do on my other podcast is gonna be difficult. So that's where I use the word, it's not malleable, it's very malleable still, where the concept of this podcast isn't all 100% flushed out, because I think what you'll also get here is I'll invite people to talk about specific topics, and maybe those will be a shorter conversation. Maybe those will be a very quick and dirty run through of perspective and their concepts of something versus my idea of something, and we discuss back and forth. It'll probably also include some of the real talk. Some of you that have followed me on the LifeGeneralist YouTube channel, which this will probably be posted on as well, have seen some of those, and sometimes I think those get fairly popular response. So you'll probably see some of the real talk here. You'll probably see a little bit more ranty stuff here, and you'll probably see a different side of me that you don't see with maybe Ruben on the other podcast. Primarily because it's two sides to every coin, right? Well, the other side of me, besides being jovial and saying things for the sake of the laugh, you'll also get a very introspective, very thought-provoking, very possibly intense version of me that you won't see necessarily on that podcast. There'll be certain things I won't touch on this podcast for those of you that are curious. I won't be doing politics because, quite frankly, I don't care. I won't be doing, I don't know yet. I don't know what I won't be doing, but I think politics is one I just really don't care about enough. I don't know enough about it, and I also don't keep up with it, and I don't really have a stance on it. So I have a different view on it than some people do, especially in this heated time that we're in when it comes to politics. But that's it, ladies and gents. I hope that kind of flushed out the ideas of what the podcast will be. This is just basically an introductory episode, primarily because iTunes requires something. And you'll get a little bit more ideas. And I think eventually we'll all get a better feel of what the podcast is going to morph and evolve into after a few episodes and after some of the things that you'll see kind of come up. And in the first few episodes, in the first episode, probably episode or two, you'll probably come across an episode I've uploaded on my other podcasts, primarily because those were things that I wanted to get a feel for, and I enjoy doing, and that's why this podcast came about. And it just felt out of place in the other podcast. The other podcast is just very jovial, very joking, very two guys just bullshitting, having fun, whatever, and just saying things for the sake of laughter, right? This one will be a little bit more introspective. You'll get a little bit more perspective on other people and their lives and how things and their choices have affected them. Maybe you'll hear about really cool career choices that people have chosen, and I'll ask stupid, unnecessary questions as to about very small details that only probably I care about. That's probably where you get a little bit of this as well. I love the details. But one of the things I hope that comes across in this podcast, whether it's a more serious episode or a very jovial episode, because we'll still have those as well, is the concept of just different perspectives for different people. Oftentimes and I've had this conversation with somebody recently, oftentimes we're very quick to see the differences in each other, and we tend to make fences or walls. We build a wall between each other, and we're usually a lot more similar than we end up really giving each other credit for. So the concept of the podcast is to give you different perspectives as to what it's like for other people to have experienced certain things or to live through certain things, or their perspective on things. And I think that's one thing that Game of Thrones has done a very good job about, is showing you different sides of different people, or different sides of the coin, if you will, so that maybe you might not agree with their choices, but you definitely get an understanding and see how that in their perspective, with their upbringing, with their morale code and whatever that's defined as, that you probably would have made very similar choices. So that's kind of hopefully one of my goals for this podcast, is to just start the discussion in your own mind about choices or about different things that people have to kind of go through, and things like, for example, if we're talking about a specific career, you'll get their perspective, and there's some I really want to get that are a little bit more difficult to get because they're a little bit more taboo of a career choice, but or they're career choices where people really aren't allowed to talk about them. But I'm working on it, guys. I'm working on it. So so for those of you that are very interested in the podcast and have stuck with me through these last few minutes, keep an eye on my social media. I have no idea how frequently I'll drop content, because I don't want to get to a point where I leave you guys too far and few in between. So I'll have to really figure that out. And like I said, this is all very malleable. So it's all very pliable right now. I'm not sure exactly how to make this work, but that's kind of the fun of this endeavor, is the fact that it's a fun project for me. I enjoy doing this, but it also takes a little bit of work and planning ahead. So I don't want to leave you guys high and dry, but the goal is moving forward to have some sort of consistency. So if you guys have ideas for content or something you'd like to kind of have me discuss or talk about after you've gotten the feel of kind of what the podcast is going to be about, feel free to hit me up. I think the best case scenario is going to be if you follow me on Instagram. That's probably going to be the best way to figure out when the new podcast is going to be dropped. Additionally, if you're listening to this on iTunes, on Stitcher, on whatever you listen to it, bookmark it, subscribe, save it so that you get notifications as to when this is coming out. But I'll do my best to try to notify you via Instagram or Twitter or whatnot that something's coming out. And if you don't know my handles, I'll link it all down below. But just search LifeGeneralist on Instagram and you'll come across it. That's probably what I use the most. So that's it, ladies and gents. Hopefully next week, I'm hoping next week, a week from today, I'll drop the first official episode. And I believe that's the one where we'll be talking about pregnancy and giving birth to children. Or no, wait, hold on. No. I think we're going to be talking about, we have Eric on, I believe, actually. We're backtracking a little bit. We have two retro episodes, and then we're going to come back. So we're going to get some new. We're going to get the new out. And so either next week, be surprised, we'll either talk about military and being in the military and military life from the experience of Eric, and or we'll talk about pregnancy and child giving. Still interesting either way, and I do my best to try to keep this entertaining for you guys. So hopefully you enjoy it. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks again.